Escoffier is a strong and meta-relevant off-field cryo sub-DPS and support, as not only does she deal good personal damage with her skill, but she's also a strong healer with her burst and provides a large team damage buff in the form of Hydro and Cryo Res Shred, which increases significantly when the entire team consists of only Hydro and Cryo characters. So while Escoffier is still decent in non-freeze teams, she really shines in freeze teams with only Hydro and Cryo units, benefiting many Hydro and Cryo DPSs. And of course, this includes the current best Hydro DPS in the game, Neuvillette. Neuvillette's standard best team consists of Farina, Kazuha, and Shilonen. With Escoffier's release, Neuvillette now has another strong meta team, replacing Kazuha and Shilonen with Escoffier and Sitlali. In this team specifically, I want to discuss and analyze in more detail, as there is a huge misconception going around regarding the general meta evaluation of this team. I've already talked about this topic extensively in my complete Escoffier guide video, which I highly suggest you check out for more details regarding specific builds and teams for Escoffier. If you've already watched it already, thank you. The info I talk about here will largely be the same with some slight additions. If you haven't yet, let's talk more about this Escoffier Neuvillette problem now, shall we? Now, there is a popular widespread narrative that I've seen going around saying that Escoffier is a strict buff to Neuvillette and that the Escoffier team with Farina and Sitlali will be Neuvillette's new best team, even better than the current Kazuha and Shilonen team. For example, even Zajef, who is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, TC-oriented Genshin creators in the community, believes that this is the case, as he states it in his own Escoffier video.
Anyways, all in all, this is going to be Neuvillette's best team once Escoffier comes out. And basically, because of those things, Escoffier will be an upgrade to Neuvillette.
And it is likely that other creators such as Xiox will have similar takes once they release their own guides propagating the narrative. Now, just to preface this, I have a lot of respect for Zajef as a TC and Genshin creator. He puts in a lot of work in both his streams and YouTube videos, whether it's through calcs, abyss testing, or answering questions. And his content has really helped expand my knowledge of the game when I watched it regularly before, so definitely no ill will to him. I'm just using his video as an example of the narrative going around stating that Escoffier is looking to create Neuvillette's new best team, because from the calcs and TC that I followed, the idea that Escoffier creates the new best Neuvillette team is not so clear cut, as there are a lot of nuances and misconceptions that need to be addressed, and the overall conclusion from many TCers is that Escoffier does not make Neuvillette's overall new best team, and I'll show you some team DPS calcs and explain why this is the case. There are a few key reasons given to support the idea that the Escoffier Neuvillette team is his new best team, which Zajef does explain in his video. To summarize the main points, even though the Escoffier team makes Neuvillette lose an A1 stack, since the only reaction that the team can trigger against a neutral enemy is freeze, the team damage makes up for this loss in Neuvillette's personal damage through Escoffier's own personal damage and the fact that she can shorten the overall rotation time of the team. This is because Escoffier just needs her skill to be active in attacking an enemy for the res shred to be continually refreshed for 12 seconds. In contrast, buffs like Shilonen and Kazuha's need to be refreshed to maintain their uptime, which requires you to swap back into them and use their skills again, lengthening the rotation, and shorter rotations means a higher damage per second. Now, based on team DPS calcs comparing the Escoffier team with the Kazuha Shilonen team done by Prastal, big thanks to him for allowing me to showcase his calcs, DPS wise, the Escoffier Neuvillette team being better is true. Instead of the normal 28 second rotation, Escoffier can allow a 24.5 second rotation, which on paper makes it a slight DPS increase over the Kazuha Shilonen team. However, there are some major caveats with this result. First, as with all calcs, DPS isn't the only story being told. Sure, a shorter rotation results in a higher DPS, but that doesn't make the team necessarily better. Longer rotations can actually be more effective in combat situations like Spiral Abyss. If there are multiple waves of enemies, longer rotations gives you a more practical benefit of being able to spend that longer time defeating 2 waves of enemies within a single longer rotation. While if you had a shorter rotation, you may not be able to defeat both waves of enemies within the single shorter time frame, and would thus have to rely on a second rotation to defeat the second wave. This is supported by the fact that even though the Escoffier team is calcing with a slightly higher damage per second, the Kazuha Shilonen team has a larger damage per rotation, which can be better in practice. Second, while the Escoffier team does sheet higher, it trades Neuvillette's AoE damage for Escoffier's single target damage. Neuvillette with Escoffier will be doing less of a percentage of the team's damage compared to the Kazuha Shilonen team, and in many scenarios this is actually not preferable. While the single target damage can be fine against bosses, once you get into AoE scenarios where there's more than one enemy, which is one of Neuvillette's biggest strengths, it is much better to deal more damage on Neuvillette's attacks, as Escoffier Escoffier's damage will only target one enemy. Third, the Escoffier Neuvillette team has a larger energy requirement. In order to have enough energy for the team to function well, you'll likely need an ER weapon on Farina and Favonius Lance on Escoffier, or funnel particles to Escoffier with Favonius Codex Sitlali. This makes it harder to use more damage-oriented weapons on your supports, which the Kazuha Shilonen team can make room for. Fourth, even though Escoffier's turret maintains easy uptime on a res shred without refreshing the skill, its attacks are only single target, so it will only reapply the res shred on a single target. In addition, there will be a slight delay on the res shred applying in multi-wave scenarios since you need to wait a little for Escoffier's turret to hit the enemy and apply the res shred. In AoE, or if a new wave of enemy spawns, if you want to apply or reapply Escoffier's res shred on all these enemies, you still need to rely on her using or reusing her skill or burst, while a character like Shilonen only requires you to be nearby an enemy while her res shred is active to apply, making Shilonen technically more effective in multi-wave scenarios than Escoffier. Lastly, if you have more investment into your Neuvillette, or if you're able to cheat out an extra A1 stack through an enemy elemental aura or Neuvillette C1, the Kazuha Shilonen team will outperform the Escoffier team. Now, Jeff states in his video that even with C1 Neuvillette, Escoffier is still looking like a minor upgrade.
Now, from what I've seen, I still think it's a minor upgrade to his teams even at C1, but it's a lot closer.
However, based on Prastal's calcs, this isn't true. Based on his results, a C1 Neuvillette, or one who is able to get an additional stack through an enemy aura, is looking to perform better in the Kazuha Shilonen team compared to the Escoffier team, both in terms of damage per second and damage per rotation. One reason for this is because of the difference in the amount of Neuvillette's A1 stacks that each team can provide against a neutral enemy. The Escoffier team can only trigger freeze at a baseline, so with C1 or an enemy elemental aura, the team is going from 1 A1 stack to 2. In contrast, the Kazuha Shilonen team triggers both Hydro Crystallize and Swirl, so with C1 or an enemy elemental aura, the team is going from 2 A1 stacks at a baseline to 3, and Neuvillette's damage increase from 2 to 3 A1 stacks is higher than 1 to 2 stacks. The other main reason is that when your main DPS does a lot of damage, you ideally want to buff that damage for the best team performance. Remember that Neuvillette with Escoffier will be doing less of a percentage of the team's total damage compared to the Kazuha Shilonen team, but if your Neuvillette is doing more personal damage through better vertical investment, you don't want to split his damage share within the team, which is the case in the Escoffier team. You want to make Neuvillette do most of the damage and funnel all the buffs to him, which is what the Kazuha Shilonen team does best. So the difference in team performance isn't just C1 Neuvillette. Any sort of increased character investment, whether it is better artifact quality, Neuvillette's signature, his constellations, or even Farina's signature or her constellations, will make the Kazuha Shilonen team perform better. Thus, while the Escoffier Neuvillette team does have a slightly higher DPS than the Kazuha Shilonen team on paper, because the Escoffier team performs worse in AoE, has a lower damage per rotation, has potential extra energy issues, and doesn't scale as well with higher investment in Neuvillette or Farina, the Neuvillette Escoffier Farina Sitlali team is not his overall new best team, and the Kazuha Shilonen version will still be Neuvillette's general best team overall. This, however, doesn't mean that Escoffier is bad with Neuvillette. She's still a very solid side grade support option. For instance, the Escoffier Sitlali team does bring a shield and potential freeze uptime, which gives more defensive utility for a C0 Neuvillette who doesn't have innate resistance to interruption, which the Kazuha Shilonen team can't provide. Now, personally, I haven't experienced too many interruption issues with my C0 Neuvillette using Kazuha and Shilonen. However, each player is different, and I can acknowledge that the shield and potential freeze uptime can bring a lot more comfort in playing the team, which can be valuable. Also, Escoffier will be one of the most effective support choices for a Neuvillette team when against certain enemy matchups where cryo application is needed, such as the Electro Shield of an Abyss Lector, or against bosses like the new Secret Source Automaton Overseer device, whose main mechanic requires fast cryo hits. Escoffier is still a good support for Neuvillette, especially in the right scenarios, just not the clear upgrade that many people may claim. So I wouldn't recommend pulling Escoffier just for your Neuvillette team, but if you pull Escoffier to buff a cryo DPS primarily, then you will get value in being able to potentially use Escoffier with Neuvillette as another team option. And this additional team building versatility and flexibility is, in my opinion, the biggest value that Escoffier actually brings to Neuvillette. And that's everything I wanted to discuss about Escoffier and Neuvillette. I'm curious about what you all think on this topic, so feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts and whether or not you agree or disagree with the points I made. Don't forget to like the video or subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this analysis, and with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day.